Man, I really gotta get some hardwired Wi-Fi here. I mean, Ethernet. I sure wish that I knew how. I'm gonna turn this light out. I sure wish that I knew how to plan what time this started. Oh, that's not good. That's too dark. I don't know if anyone's here yet. Sorry about, you know, this. God, I really wish I knew what I was doing. I stopped hitting my head. I gotta turn this light back on. Oh shit. Man, if anyone's listening to this right now, I'm gonna be real embarrassed. This is a whole lot. I'm dealing with some stuff here, folks. I got a whole new studio getting set up, and I'm not very good at the tech. Crap. Always watching. Okay. Okay. Getting going here in a second. Um, okay. We good here? Hey, Daniel, how's my audio, brother? We doing okay? I got this new thing here. I meant to get a. I bought the wrong size of a. What's it called? I call it a trampoline mic stand. It's basically how it works. Crystal clear. Okay, not bad. How's the Oh, hey Craig, how you doing, brother? That's good. That's good. I'm gonna have. I'm hearing in the recordings. I get a little bit of these tings, and I went on the internet and I bought the wrong. I bought the wrong setup. I bought the wrong thing. I gotta buy a different size that fits it better, but hopefully that'll fix it. But That's good. And the video quality is supposed to be 1080, but I don't think I'm getting anywhere close to that. Just on account of the streaming issues. But we got the Frontier moving into the area, and they have some high speed, and I'm gonna hardwire it so that next time, as long as I'm in my home studio, it'll be pretty okay. It's really fuzzy, but sounds good. What does that mean? Also, you typed crystal, not like crystal, but like crystal and Sauger crystal, and I don't know how to feel about that, especially. I know you and I were speaking about her earlier today. I'm sorry. Just give me one moment, guys. I'm gonna drink some water, and I'm gonna. The video is fuzzy. Yeah, I think it's the. Okay, as long as the audio is good, that's what I care about. I'm gonna. Here, I got it streaming on my other device. I'm gonna shut this one down. Okay. Oh, great. Okay. Yeah, I was literally I it's not worth explaining. Let me just shut this. I'm going to shut down my laptop. I just set up a new desktop this week so I can do the editing. Okay. Okay. I'm going to start it for real. Actually, I lied. I'm going to give me 1 second here. Okay. Okay. Am I good? 3 people are here. Daniel, Craig, somebody. Are we? Okay. All right. I'm going to hope it's good, and I'm going to start. I usually have 2 monitors for this. I just I'm setting up this new computer. Where the hell is my? I need to get a tech guy. I can't afford a Jamie. Is the problem? Um. Okay. Okay. I'm sorry, guys. It's 8:06. I should have been going at 8. This is unprofessional, but I am unprofessional. There is only one young Jamie. You're right. You're right. There is only one young Jamie. That dude is very good at his job. Okay. Oh crap. How do I share my screen? Guys, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I gotta pull this other thing up real quick. I gotta share the screen. Okay. Okay. Did that do it? I gotta wait for it to catch up. No, I'm there. Okay. But my face isn't on it. Man, I sure wish that I knew what was happening here. I would have set this up beforehand, but I didn't. It um I didn't know how to do it. It's very small and in the corner. Oh, so you do see me. Whatever. My face isn't that great anyway. Thank you, Daniel. Okay. Okay, I see it now. All right. So the first thing I want to talk about. Yeah. Okay, I see myself. I'll figure out how to make it look a little bit better on Mac. But his stuff's a little bit more professional. He's got the Blaze network. I hope to one day live up to him. But yeah, illegitimate scholar law is probably try to do listening questions from the listeners in the future, so I can take questions. But feel free to ask questions while I'm going the different articles. I got a number of different articles to go over, notes on them, and this is the way I'm going to do it. A few articles to go over, a few other things I have just written down. I have thoughts about from the week. Unlike the other things, this is not scripted. It's current event stuff, so it's not what I normally do on the normal episodes, but it is just my perspective from the way I talk about everything else, but just everyday news. And as I always do in my everyday life, I will, of course, bring up obscure references to indigenous groups in places no one's ever heard of and make comparisons that baffle regular neoliberal normies' minds. So we're going to start, obviously, with the indicting Daniel Penny and the chokehold death of New York City subway rider Jordan Neely. And I didn't even realize this when I was actually going through these articles, but calling Jordan Neely a subway rider, I think is pretty crazy. Because yeah, he was riding the subway. That's like calling victims of the Holocaust train riders. This is insane. I mean, obviously that's a worse comparison, but the him being a subway rider is not the most important here. This guy is not going to get a New York slice. I mean, he was on the subway yelling about killing people and how he was in jail. You don't, that's not good. That's not that, man, that ain't it. That really ain't it. So Neely was shouting at passengers and begging for money when Penny pinned him to the floor of the moving subway car with the help of two other riders. Penny, a former U.S. Marine, then held Neely in a chokehold that lasted for more than 3 minutes. I'm not going to go into the full deal, the whole thing. You guys kind of understand it. I'm sure it's been everywhere. But here's an actual piece from I pulled out earlier as important. Daniel Penny was charged by Manhattan, likely Soros funded. I don't want to spend any of these people are. Last month, in the May 1st, Neely, a former Michael Jackson impersonator who struggled in recent years with and mental illness. And obviously these things. I mean, Daniel Penny, or I'm sorry, not Daniel Penny, but Jordan Neely did struggle in recent years with homelessness and mental illness, but it's what they concentrate on because, of course, yes, it's a tragedy that this man died. I mean, I'll say that I truly think it is, but at the same time, I mean, other people's safety matters. It's the fact that he was indicted. They made a huge show of it, pulling out, getting a whole camera crew of him. People knew what he did. The prosecutors have chosen a prosecutor. Of course, has decided that they're going to have a trial. But I mean, a grand jury just means enough evidence. So what the prosecutor had to say was, while we respect the decision of the grand jury to move this case forward to trial, it should be noted that the standard of proof in a grand jury is very low, and there has been no finding of wrongdoing. We're confident that when a trial jury is tasked with weighing the evidence, they will find Daniel Penny's actions on that train were fully justified, Razor said. So it does, he's been indicted by a grand jury. That expected, because a grand jury just decides. It's a jury of, when people hear jury, they think someone's on trial, but really a jury is a group of people less than the 12-man jury or something, and they decide that they are going to actually put a case forward towards a judge and potentially a jury. And there's a lower level of proof required for this. So really they're just kind of deciding if there's enough evidence to even bring this charge forward. And I'm not surprised a guy died that they're bringing this to trial. If this were a normal situation and I were trial, this would be whatever. I mean, it makes sense. The guy died. I'm not too familiar with the case. It's possible that maybe the guy went overboard and killed him. But at the same time, who's responsible for the situation where there's this guy, Jordan Neely, who is a former Michael Jackson impersonator, who, more than being a Michael Jackson impersonator, made a lot of people around him very nervous, and had people who were on the train that day might not have known this, but that this guy was screaming, "I'm going to kill you," and he was ready to die for life. And that this guy had been to jail several times, had been arrested many times, had hit two different elderly people, a man and a woman, at different times. Yeah, it's a difficult situation, obviously, but the clear message is that if you defend people on the train, if you're a good Samaritan, if you stand up for anything in public, that protected by the state. Society will not protect you. And I don't know if he'll get a fair trial, because there is an element that people will riot, likely, if he isn't punished. I think that as much as technically it's not supposed to be like that, it doesn't mean that it isn't in practice like that. And we'll see what happens. But at this point, the trial has started. I'm sure it's going to be between everybody. It's going to be terrible. It's going to be not fun. It's an all-around bad situation. If the city had done its job and to help this man, who clearly definitely had mental health issues, right? But when you struggle with mental health issues, you struggle with homelessness, that really sucks. But that doesn't mean that you get to on public transport. And there's a disconnect between those two things. I mean, I have sympathy for him, and it sucks that at the end of the day, the city allowed this situation to go on for years and years and years, and they didn't want to break down. They didn't want to do anything about it, and it led to this. And there's going to be more situations like this. There was a situation on, I think it was New York City train. I forgot to grab the article, but I'm sure you'll hear about it. Maybe not as much because this guy was black, but a guy on the subway or a bus punched this guy's girlfriend, and they stabbed the other dude to death after they fought. And just like with Penny, I mean, dude, if you punch a guy's, I think there should be a law written where if you punch a guy's girlfriend or wife, or if you punch a woman in public, I mean, and then you try to fight somebody, I mean, I'm not going to say, I don't know, it's probably too far to say that you should be able to get killed, but like, people need to have a right to defend themselves, and these are serious, life-threatening situations. You don't know what this guy's capable of. But yeah, it's just an all-around bad situation, and the city should be prosecuting these things so it doesn't get the city failed this man. Public failed Neely just as much as they failed Penny. Okay, I'm gonna read the comment. Impersonator pictures used in the stories are from 2009. Yeah, they are. They're gonna pick it. I mean, I don't think from NPR. I don't think this article, which is from NPR, actually includes Neely's former arrests. example of racial injustice. I mean, wasn't there a black guy and a Hispanic guy helping the white guy? I mean, that's America, right? Just a white guy, a black guy, and a Hispanic guy getting together to protect everybody on a having a mental health crisis who probably should be dealt with in a different way, but nobody's taken responsibility for it and allowed him to live. Yeah. Okay. Next article. Moving on. Okay, so this thing, ex-Starbucks manager. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't read your comment, Craig. The lawyer should ask for a change in venue to get a fair trial. I agree with you. I it doesn't. I wonder if that argument would. I think it should. I just don't know to handle a case like that. But I don't see obvious that a white male in New York City would not. It's that seems clear to me. But you try to tell a neoliberal like, hey, maybe there's some situations where white men aren't in the best situation, and maybe to be fair, it needs to be somewhere else. But people just hear, oh, you're saying straight white men are oppressed, and not really. I mean, some are. I'm certainly not oppressed. Might be someday, but in certain situations like this one, that can definitely be the case, and I think that that's true here. And I more than just his race, more than just his race and what he looks like. Absolute Chad, by the way. I mean, the guy, fuck YouTube, shouldn't be swearing. Stallion, guy's an absolute stallion. Looks like a pinnacle Marine. Love it. But just the high profileness of the case, it being in New York City. Move it upstate, man. DA is at least partially responsible for the situation that resulted in Neely. I think you're totally right. I think that the DA has a responsibility when they're not prosecuting crimes that lead to this type of situation. Okay, so ex-Starbucks manager awarded $25.6 million in case tied to arrests of 2 black men. So you guys might remember this a few years ago, that there was a situation where 2 black men were in a Starbucks, and I in 2018, and I guess she hadn't, or these 2 guys, they hadn't really done anything, but the cops got called on them. Starbucks was everybody was up in arms at Starbucks, even though they had very little to do with it. Oh, I'm frozen. Am I good? Okay, I'm gonna keep going. Okay. Situation. Yeah, in this situation, it was standing, which partly was, I mean, I'm willing to admit it probably was based on a little bit of racism. I don't know. I don't know, but whether or not it was, let's assume it was. And the company fired this white store manager. So jurors in a federal court have awarded $25.6 million. Where is this from? Jurors in a federal court have awarded $25.6 million to a former manager who alleged that she and other white employees were unfairly punished after the high-profile arrest men at a Philadelphia location in 2018. So, of damages is pretty crazy. So, a Philadelphia store manager, they called police and these 2 black guys just sitting there. So she got told to put this white manager on leave. She didn't want to do that because she didn't do anything. She gets fired. They bring in this other person. Apparently, there was also a black district manager who was responsible for the store where the arrest took place. She wasn't fired, and she was cited in an affidavit or some sort of court admissible. She said this in a court admissible way. She either said it in court or she said it in a place where it could be placed into the court records. Phillips as somebody who was beloved by her peers and worked around the clock. So, I mean, this is really about optics. The company Starbucks, there was the situation where they were in the news and they needed to fix this situation in the news where they were looking really badly at this time when people are obsessed with race relations. Took whatever action they needed and assumed that they knew what they were doing was wrong. They maybe legally, definitely morally, they knew this wasn't the right course of action, but they were willing to do what they do to not get themselves labeled as like a racist company. So they just took these actions, and they probably knew they might lose millions of dollars in a lawsuit, but they also knew that this story, that story at the time was the biggest story ever. People forgot. So they knew that after a long enough time, it wouldn't matter. And yeah, sure, they might lose the court case, but they could have potentially lost $5.6 million. That's probably how they calculated this, because to a corporation, all that matters is making the most money. And if they're going to lose money one way, but they'll save it another way, that's the action they're going to take. Yeah. Yeah. They were perceived as doing the right thing when it was in the news cycle, and there's to them. Okay, so this is interesting. Still. So LGBTQ plus creatives rely on Pride Month. This year, they're feeling the pinch. I'm just really, I here. I really care about LGBTQ plus creatives. I think they provide so much to our culture. I think they provide everything. Like, they're so necessary, and I really feel like they should be having this boost in income. Yeah, no sarcasm. That is how I truly feel. Okay. I don't want to get freaking. I want to have a chance to make money on and stay on you. So, okay. So in this case, they're saying that LGBTQ plus creatives rely on, here they're feeling the pinch. So they're not money this year. So I'm going to read a few things that I pulled out earlier. Leggett, the non-binary designer behind the gender-fluid sustainable clothing company official rebrand, said companies that usually reached out to them for sponsored partnerships month have not approached them this year. I don't know why I didn't think about doing this before. Let's go see what official rebrand makes. We're going to take a little detour here. Head on over. Wow. Oh, that's a statement. What is a man? What is a man? But there's no question mark. Oh, God. It's like Tron. Oh, no. Oh, I thought that was a swastika. Yo, that was like, okay. That looks like blinds for a house. That's a blanket. Girl, what are you doing? I shouldn't say girl. I shouldn't assume her gender. Okay. What? Am I allowed to show this on? Oh, shoot. Oh, God. I got it. Got it. Well, okay. Those were non-binary nipples, YouTube. So they're okay, I think. Crap. I can't get defunded if I don't make any money and only 4 people watch my thing. Okay, so that was a bad idea. This is why I gotta get stuff earlier. Okay, but that was weird, right? That was weird. That's what they make. This is the kind of stuff. Okay. Free the non-binary nipple. Yeah. It was just I saw him. I tried to physically cover it on the screen. It didn't work with my because it's showing through that. But yeah, that was like a shirt that was it was like woven. That was weird. Okay, so this year is different. In recent years, businesses big and small have seen June as an opportune time to position themselves as inclusive and to show their support of LGBTQ plus communities. Brand allyship has come in the form of collaborations with queer influencers and creatives with significant online following. So this is the this is the point here. I mean, these are businesses, they're trying to make money. But this year is different. Anti-transgender voices have grown louder as conservative protests against big name brands that signaled support for LGBTQ plus communities. In April, after Bud Light's promotion with trans influencer Dylan Mulvaney sparked a boycott of the beer, parent company Anheuser-Busch put 2 executives on leave and distanced itself from Mulvaney. Target pulled some Pride merchandise from its stores. Yeah, so this is like this is what's happening with the Bud Light boycott. Apparently worked, and some of it's happening with Target too. And with these companies, they're all about making money. They did this rainbow capitalism thing for a few years because it pumped up, people ate it up, and they bought everything. And now it's the first ones where it's like, hey, maybe this doesn't actually help us, especially if you're a brand like Bud Light. And now it's and now people are mad about it. And you know, NPR posts this article, and assume the person writing this, it's an article for NPR. Of course, it's left wing. But I bet they don't feel the same way that maybe me or you or some other people feel about it. So it's out that like these are people who, yeah, they're making stuff that they like, they want to make, but they're also capitalizing on the popularity of this stuff, and they're complaining about like not doing. And of course, they're complaining about companies not doing this because not only really what they make money off of companies liking this type of thing. So, or they make money off of this being a popular thing, off doing deals with companies. So, of course, they're not going to like it. And I'm sure there's an element of caring about this type of thing because of their personal identity and everything like that. To ignore the profit motive from the companies and also from the individuals. So yeah, they said they used the opportunity to send this message. Rain is all fun and games until you actually have to show up and you actually have to stand firm. To be an ally, you have to be uncomfortable because as a queer person, your existence is uncomfortable. All right. Sorry, your existence is uncomfortable. I think you're deciding that for yourself, probably. But, you know, whatever. But why would a company be an ally? Why would a company stand up? I have an episode about this. It's one of my favorite episodes I've done, which is like the status of the corporation in the United States. And like based on the incentives of the corporation, how they're structured, these things are set up to make money. They're going to take whatever action makes them the most money. So it's like, what do you understand this to be an ally? You actually have to show up and you have to stand firm. But like, who has to? The people that run the company, because their incentives, most of these are publicly traded companies, their incentives are in line with they have a legal responsibility to the owners of the company. If it's a publicly traded company, the shareholders of the company. And so they have to show up and you have to stand firm. I mean, what does the entity of the corporation? It's a corporation doesn't have opinions. And the fact that we're at the point where corporations have opinions, it doesn't, maybe once they personify corporations into AI, they'll have opinions, but those will just, God, that's horrifying. But those will just be based on making money. Okay. Craig, people vote with their dollar, and also with inflation, it will affect sales. Yeah, so obviously people vote with their dollar, and when have noticed that people are voting with their dollar, they're going to, and they're pulling back off of some of this stuff. That's why they're producing less of this stuff. And also with inflation, it will affect sales. Yeah, that's another element of this. So we're talking about, wow. So of course, with Bud Light, you can see that Bud Light has lost sales to other beers. So that one's probably not inflation related. But a lot of these companies in trouble. Their revenues are going down. And people's disposable income. So might be an element of this. I'm sure that is an element of this. How large of an element of this it is, because running these types of things, it costs money, and companies right now, when they're tightening their belts, know they're likely to make less money on it, and it might. They're probably not willing to take that risk right now because they know that it's possible a coming recession of their company, and a lot of these financial people up at high in these companies, they know that, and they're going to act accordingly to protect themselves and their companies, because that's where their loyalties lie. It's based on, literally based on the structure of the corporation. So next article, unless someone else has something to say, questions or anything. Okay, this one's not so fun, but Epstein survivors secure a $290 million settlement with J.P. Morgan Chase. The bank will pay $290 million as part of the settlement. David, uh, so I took like excerpts out of the article and I put them and I printed. Now I don't know where they are in the article sometimes, which is annoying. Oh, there it is. The bank will pay $290 million as part of the settlement, according to David Boas, attorney for the plaintiffs. I think, an object lesson of how much far as a society to really implement the rule of law, not just for the rich and powerful. Boas said in an interview with NPR. Great. I mean, it's good. Like, this court case shows that J.P. Morgan Chase, one of the largest banks in the world, was working with Epstein. It shows that they knew this for a long time. In 2000, it emerged in 2006 that Epstein was using his wealth to exploit minors and young women. And are we good? Yeah. And last month, Deutsche Bank agreed to a $75 million settlement in a similar case. Okay. This is what we talked about. Corporations and banks are even more direct because they deal directly in money, but they will to make money. They're not above dealing with. They're really not. And what this case shows, of course, is that J.P. Morgan did this. What was similar about the cases? It was the same thing. Deutsche Bank agreed to pay for like doing Epstein's money. They've lost. They were charged $75 million. So they knew. This is a company knew, but individuals in this company knew. There were individuals in this company, and those individuals made choices to deal with. There's other evidence. I'm not going to get too far into it. I'm sure you guys know a lot of it, but this is what I'm talking about with the incentives from making money in these corporations, and why they exist. They exist for a purpose. They serve a purpose, and there are positives to them. I'm not denying that. But the existence of corporations and banks, especially, and central banks, probably the most of all, they create incentives that are bad for society and need to be curtailed in a certain way, I think. And I mean, this is stuff that's been going on for decades. This one hasn't been proven yet, but Deutsche Bank as well has been accused, likely seriously, of helping to fund terrorist groups. There have been banks found to be dealing with cartels, and these aren't these aren't like conspiracy theories. These are public cases. They're the types of things that large financial institutions have been found guilty is insane. The financial crime is proven and but these things don't really get publicized that much. I should probably talk about and the fines for many of these things are so low that they don't dissuade them from. So this happened. The bank knew. Federal judges said this. They should have known what they were doing. And before I'm done with this, if you, whatever you get about this, feel free to ask questions. But the last thing I want to say is, you know, these guys probably knew in 2000, probably knew earlier about what was going on. These people did, and they chose to keep banking with. But they killed Kanye West's bank account like that for something. I don't know. I don't think they ever stated the exact reason, but they cut Kanye's access to banking. And they did it to the truckers too. I mean, that was in Canada, but you know, Canada is it's I'd be surprised if they weren't doing some stuff up there to test on the American populace. Because you know, Canada, people discard it. They're like, "Oh, that's going on in Canada. That's another country." But they're our best friends. They're our closest cultural ally, closest trade partner. They're closest everything. And what's being done in Canada is very unlikely that it isn't very likely. Whatever's being done in Canada is very likely to be done here sooner or later. God. Yeah. So they were freezing truckers' bank accounts, and they they were freezing truckers' bank accounts, and they froze Yee's bank account, but they did not freeze Epstein's. Epstein trafficked girls through Tel Aviv. Kanye was anti-Semitic. Yeah, I mean Kanye was anti-Semitic, or well, Semitic. He changed his mind because of um, Jonah Hill's Street, which by the way, like people kind of made fun of Yee for that. I think he kind of knew what he was saying. It was a hilarious freaking thing to say. I think he meant it. And to be honest, I personally, I really like Yee a lot. And I went back and I watched 21 Jump Street, and that's a better movie than people give it. The last of that era, great coming of age buddy cop comedy. I mean, it's a classic movie. I mean, that is a great movie. It's done really well, and it's an American classic. It really is. I mean, it has so many of these tropes from like the 80s and 90s, these classic like teen movies, coming of age movies. But it's done in a different, more modern way, and I really think that is an incredible movie. And frankly, I think Jonah Hill did do an exceptional job in that movie, and I thought that before. I mean, I also think what's his name, Channing Tatum, did a great job as well. But you know, I quite a lot. I think his best work is in War Dogs and Wall Street, but he's doing a lot of weird stuff now that I haven't looked at. But I really enjoyed his acting. So yeah, Kanye West did nothing wrong. What's up, Doug? Just putting the kids to bed. That is a-okay. Glad you're here. Appreciate it. Okay. This is the next one here. What we're doing. Okay. Actually, hold on one moment. All right. U.S. doctors policy on healthy weight assessment. And honestly, this article blew my mind. Okay, so the American Medical Association. You might remember the American Medical Association if you listened to my last episode, 34. I'm sorry, I haven't done a real numbered illegitimate scholar episode in about 2 weeks now, but we'll be getting to it. Higgy, I just got your text. You could have put that in the chat. Is my audio better now? The hell's happening? Um, so the American Medical Association, you 34 recently. It was the one on medicine. The American Medical Association, which was the special interest group, got the Carnegies, took over the medical industry and pushed biomedicine based on the inclusion of petroleum byproducts. And if that doesn't make any sense to you, go to the and listen to episode 34. I go into that in detail, so I'm not going to now. But the American Medical Association is a special interest group that association of doctors in the country. I think still, it used to be larger. It used to be almost unanimous, or it used to be almost all doctors were in it. Not anymore. So the AMA on Wednesday said it will advise doctors to pay less attention to body mass index in determining if a patient is at a measure does not predict disease risk equally well across racial and ethnic groups. Across racial and ethnic groups. Like, they had me in this article up until here. I mean, that's true, right? Like, a BMI is a ratio of height to weight. Joe Rogan is obese by BMI standards, and he's a gorilla. So it's not the best indicator of health. But as well, across racial and ethnic, like, the BMI is racist now. Everything's racist. The BMI is racist. I can't believe this. BMI, a ratio of height to weight. Yep. Underweight, normal weight, overweight, obese, and morbid obese. At the influential physicians group, yeah, they're in. They call it a physicians group, but like, it's made up of physicians. But that's not, like, come on. That's whatever. His article just starts talking about race immediately. It's issues with BMI as a measurement due to its historical, and it's used for racist inclusion. The BMI scale is based primarily on data from white people, while body shape and composition vary among racial and ethnic groups, genders, and age groups. So like, it because of differences in race. I mean, if that were the only issue with it, which it isn't, I don't understand why they wouldn't BMIs for different racial groups. But also, like, I thought that these types of people, like, denied physiological differences in, well, number one, BMI does control for differences in sex. Like, there's different women. So if they're talking about genders, like, are they implying that, like, a non-binary person has, like, a physiological difference that makes their body, and, like, are they, well, body shape and composition, like, are they saying that people inherently have different bodies, like black people's bodies are inherently different from white people's and from Asian people's? And but, like, or are they saying it's the manifestation of, like, culture in racial, how it comes out? I don't understand. Weight problems have long been attributed to poor lifestyle choices, such as eating too much due to lack. Look, I'm not going to say it's lack of willpower, but we have to have some level of personal responsibility. I mean, I don't think it, I think it shows, since, like, what, 45%, 40% of America is obese, that maybe there's something going on that, like, even if you could say that, yes, you're able to choose something else, the fact that 40,000 people don't and their lifestyle leads them that way means that there's probably something very serious in the culture that's wrong. But oh God. Here's another thing, and I'm going to go back to the race thing. Overemphasis of bodily thinness is as deleterious to one's physical and mental health as obesity. It asks doctors to help patients avoid obsessions with dieting and develop balanced, individualized body weight that is best. The AMA's new policy also says BMI should not be used as a criterion for denying insurance reimbursement. So, I mean, those sound good. No. Okay, so the second part sounds good. I mean, it sounds good. I don't know. The AMA tends to work in favor of insurance companies, so I don't know in practice how that's going to be, but it's bodily emphasizing on bodily thinness is less important than overall health, and you can be healthy at different weights, different individuals, and I maybe across different ethnic groups, heights in different individuals, right? Like people, Icelandic people are like 6'1", like Northern Europe people. There's like pygmies in Africa and the Congo where that eat a lot actually. People are shorter in East Asia, but it's weird that way. I don't know. So really the point I'm trying to get at, I don't know how, but I guarantee you that they are someone is making money off this. I promise. Someone is making money off this. They wouldn't adopt it otherwise. Okay, so if we were all the same and equal, how does race matter? I mean, yeah, it's not equality, it's equity. It's equity, and I don't know how this is going to go, but one thing I worry about with this, like black people, in America, black people, poor people, especially black women, poor people, and people in the South, all of those things, higher weights and less unhealthy. The first thing that I'm thinking of when I'm looking at this, and when they're talking about racism, is that they are going to use this somehow justify black being fat. And the reasoning that I see for that is that they make money off of chronic. 80% of the money spent in healthcare goes to chronic care. So things like heart disease, things that require constant medical attention, and it benefits the people are fat and people are unhealthy. They're not eating right because they will have more chronic diseases, and they can treat those chronic diseases. And if they're chronic diseases and they can keep the people alive for as long as possible, they can milk them until they're able to get the expensive end of life care. And I know that that's a very morbid way of looking at it, but these are the types of incentives that are at play when we're talking about multi-billion-dollar industries. So yeah, I've made myself depressed. So yeah, I'm sure they make money off of it. One thing I always think of on the vein of black people is black people in regards to how that you'll notice this now because I'm pointing this out. If you're watching fast food advertisements, look at who is involved. Fast food companies get black people a lot because they are of their customer base, and that is black people are more unhealthy than white people in this country, and it's evil. It's evil, and it's not. Okay. Any questions? Anything to say on that one? Just give me a moment. I usually talk a lot, but I don't usually talk this much. Okay. Here we go. U.S. will make every effort cooperation with China on fentanyl. It's very difficult to kind of sparse out what goes on with China because such a different culture from ours. I'm somebody, I love China, always have. And when I say I love China, I mean I love the Chinese culture. I love the Chinese people. I love Chinese history. I don't love the Chinese Communist Party. I don't love the American government either. And obviously, I love America and Americans, but I love China in that same sense. I've read a lot of books on China. Um, Daniel there is reading Oracle Bones right now, which is a book I recommend all the time. Who's interested in China? If you're going to read one book, Oracle Bones, by a journalist. I think he published it in the late 90s, maybe early 2000s. So right now, fentanyl, there's a number one if you don't know that in America. We have all these. I'm from New England. I'm from New England, and New England, York, especially Long Island. We years ago, and even still today, you know, it was kind of like ground zero for first like heroin and then worse stuff, and then fentanyl. And you know, it's not like obviously other places have drug problems. I think it's expanded more outward, but these. What was interesting about this, and before things they kind of popped up in the wealthier. Say wealthy, I mean middle class to upper middle class, and that's the culture that I grew up with. Middle to upper middle class white culture. That was a lot of where this stuff was starting at first, and then after that, it kind of spread everywhere else. But a lot of this fentanyl, some of it likely is coming from China, not through normal means, and it's kind of impossible to know how much of it, if any, is brought in by the Chinese government for of destabilization. And I'm not saying that to like spread a conspiracy theory. I don't necessarily think that that's true. I mean, I do think it probably is true. I do think that the Chinese government is doing that. It would be a thing that would make sense. It's a thing that governments have done forever. It wouldn't it would not it would be plausible that that's happening. And of course, before we get into this article, I need to touch on the Opium Wars, which were in the 1800s. And in the 1800s, the Opium Wars, China was the Chinese Empire was in the 1800s, and Europeans came in, specifically the English first, and the English most powerfully. They were the most powerful empire, and they sold opium to Chinese people because stuff from China. They were buying tea. For forever, these things were prized possessions for Europeans, even as early as the 1600s and prior. I mean, part of Europeans went to the New World was because their supply of Chinese goods was cut off by the Ottoman capture of Constantinople, which meant they had to pay high taxes to get Chinese goods. So they tried to go the other way. This was a big driver of this. So this created a bit deficit. And of course, we have issues with those today. But there was a trade deficit between China and the United States, or in the United Kingdom. I think it was called United Kingdom at this point. But the China was selling lots of goods to the English, and the Chinese government did not want any goods from the. The Chinese responded to attempts by the British to sell them by, number one, calling the British barbarians, because at that point in history, and for most of history, China viewed itself as and anybody who wasn't Chinese was in various states being a barbarian. So the Koreans and the Japanese being cultures, Koreans based on Confucian Chinese culture, they were closer. They were than maybe some other groups. The Manchus at this point, which are another ethnic group next to Korea, they're part of China now. Those people were actually in control of China, so they were even at a higher status than the Han, which is the majority of the Chinese population. And they they refused from the English, and the English wanted to fix this trade deficit, but their people wanted these goods. So they just started selling drugs. They just started selling opiates to the Chinese people instead of trading with the Chinese government. And the Chinese government didn't like that. So they seized the opium. And the British decided they wanted their goods back, and it started a war against them, and then there was a second one, embarrassed again, and China was destabilized, and then 5 of the 10 wars in the 19th century resulted from civil wars in this destabilized China. Eventually, I will be doing a long series on China sometime. I do my coming series on the anthropology of religion, which is going to be a 3 or 4 part podcast episode. So that'll take me through probably the next 2 months. But then maybe probably do a couple other solos, and then I'll do some stuff on China, because China is very interesting to me, and it is the Middle Kingdom, and it's returning back to that spot, possibly. Maybe not. I don't know. I don't really have an opinion on it anymore. I go back and forth. But okay, let's bring this back to today. But about the 19th century in China, they call this the century of humiliation. China viewed the West, the United States, the Dutch, the French. They all came in and they had their way with China. They forced all these concessions over like 100 years, and now China's powerful again. And there's an element of like poetic revenge, coming back and using a more common version of the same drug that was used to destabilize their own country to contribute to a lot of the destabilization in our countries in the West. I don't know how much of a problem fentanyl is in the UK and France and Europe. I wish I did know. Looked it up if I thought about it. But in the United States, and I think it's quite a big issue. And I'm sure that China views the United States as an extension of the West, of the United Kingdom. And it is hard to argue that the United States, Canada's our biggest ally. Unfortunately, Israel and the UK is probably tied with them there. So, I mean, the UK, Canada, and Israel, I mean, those are, but Canada and the UK are close to us culturally. I hate to admit that, because I'm like 75% Irish, so it's it sucks, but I don't speak Irish. I don't speak it, and I live in an Anglo descended country. I speak English, so effectively I'm assimilated, and I was acculturated and grew up as an American. And that's what I am. I'm an American. I'm not saying I'm not an American. Like all of us, whether we're English, Scottish, Irish, French, German, whatever, assimilated into extension of an English culture. And the Chinese are more attuned to things like that. The premier has specifically described the Chinese people, the yellow race, the people of the dragon. That is to say that he thinks of his nation as a nation state, which is, he's the leader of a nominally Marxist, but he views, and the Chinese people in general do view China as the country of the Han Chinese. Different minorities, most of which live in the south of China, different provinces in the south, mostly southwest, and the other periphery borders. I mean, there's a subpopulation of Koreans. There's more in Inner Mongolia, which is a province of China, than actually live in Mongolia itself. There's the Tibetans, of course, the Uyghurs in Xinjiang, East Turkestan. And then there's a bunch of other ones in the south, but they make up 10% of China's population. So 1 in 10 citizens of China are not Han Chinese, and yet the premier, the leader of China, refers to China and the Chinese people, and when he's talking about he is referring to the Han Chinese people, the majority, which is a way that likely white Americans would have felt 150 years ago, 200 years ago. But that faded from Western conscious in a lot of different ways. Okay, I've been ranting for a little while on China, and nobody said anything. So check in the comments if you're there, please. And I'm going to start talking about fentanyl now, finally. Okay. So the Biden administration will strive. I'd like to hear your thoughts on Alex Soros. Oh, I didn't look into it enough, Daniel. I'm sorry. Alex Soros, of course, of George Soros, born in America, I assume. Soros, obviously, being the progressive who has funded VAs in these different places, funded a whole bunch of. He's done a lot of bad stuff, and he's basically giving the reins over to his younger son, political than he is, and has life still in him, which is just horrifying. Okay. So the Biden administration will strive to step up cooperation with China to halt the flow of synthetic opioid fentanyl into the United States. Counter narcotics officials said ahead of a U.S. visit by U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken to Beijing. Surprise to me. Some of this stuff, diplomacy is so, like, they're telling us a version of it. They can't just come right out. The Chinese government is just all into the United States in order to destabilize the country. And again, I'm not saying that's what's happening. I'm saying that it makes sense. If they were to do that, it would be in line with what other countries history, and most notably in line with what the West did, maybe not the US, but the British did just 150, 170 years ago to China. So here, okay. So the rate of U.S. drug overdose deaths involving fentanyl then tripled from 2016 through 2021, according to the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. And fentanyl is up to 50 times stronger than heroin and is increasingly mixed with other illicit drugs, often with lethal results. I know from firsthand that from knowing EMT in my county, that there has even been weed, and I don't know who laced the weed with fentanyl, but if I hadn't heard it from somebody that I knew, I would not believe that people were lacing weed with fentanyl. But that's true. You got to be careful out there. At the VA, I only smoke some weed. I don't do any other drugs besides that anymore. But but I my weed from one source, and I don't just send the fentanyl to Hunter Biden. Yeah, Greg. I mean, he'd love it. Actually, he might be clean right now. They might have made him get clean. But I have for the fentanyl. I got from the VA. They gave me a what are those things? I need to actually open it. It's in a package. But I have one of those overdose kits. Narcan. I have Narcan. They just hand it out at the VA just in case. And good thing they do, because this stuff is bad. I would not do it. Don't buy any drugs off the street. Seriously. Don't buy any Adderall off the street. Don't buy pills. They're mixing everything. Stuff that doesn't even make sense. It doesn't make to put fentanyl on weed. So we get down here, going over there. They're talking. So China's ambassador to Washington, Jin Gong. I don't know. I'm sorry. I wish I had a Chinese person listening so I could get this right pronunciation. But he's China's ambassador to Washington, called Washington's decision to sanction the institute shocking, and said it was a key public institution in the fight against fentanyl. He's now China's foreign. So this is what he said in 2022 after they blocked off this sanctioning this institute. Sorry, I lost where the institute was. institutes in China. But okay, I need to know who Robinson is. I'll get better about marking these things next time, guys. I know this sucks right now. Okay, Todd Robinson. I'm sorry, Assistant Secretary for the Bureau of International Narcotics and Law Enforcement Affairs at the state interview. So there's a number of reasons it was listed. So just unlisting it going to happen. They're talking about this is the institute that they were talking about. Public Security's Institute of Forensic Science on the Comments Department's entity list. So the U.S. put this institute on a list, borrowing it from U.S. exports, and China's mad about it. And this guy's saying it. You can't just unlist it. Todd Robinson is saying we're hear from him in a minute as well, but he is the Assistant Secretary for the Bureau of International Narcotics and Law Enforcement Affairs at the State Department. That seems like a big job. International Enforcement Affairs. That's a huge institute. Issue. The lab is large. It's part of a much larger facility, and only part of the facility is listed. So the United States has said the institute was complicit in human rights abuses towards Uyghurs and other Chinese ethnic minorities. I don't know. I don't know one way or the other anymore. I used to believe that was definitely a fact. Now I'm just not sure. I don't know. So what happens down here? Robinson says this is the same guy. He did not find it that China would seek to extract concessions from Washington in exchange for help on fentanyl. I mean, that sounds. It's someone asks him if it's unusual that China would seek to extract concessions. It kind of sounds like they're asking money in order to stop themselves giving the fentanyl to the U.S. And the U.S. government, I assume, does not want to admit that the Chinese government is capable of getting fentanyl that is causing a massive epidemic in the U.S. that the U.S. government is also incapable. They don't want to admit that our borders are that with getting in illicit substances, but is coming from because the borders are basically open, and I'm sure that the shipping itself, I mean, flying it into Mexico and then bringing it over the southern border, or bringing it in by boats, not through ports, or bringing it in by boats, ships. I'm sure they're doing all three. I don't know if they're doing this. I'm just saying it makes sense if they do. I need to make sure what YouTube is gonna freaking kick me off for. But China's probably doing it on purpose. They're probably doing it on purpose. They want concessions. I'm sure we're probably doing the same thing. I mean, I'm sure that we've done it not with diseases and drugs, but in other ways of funding rebels and things like that. I mean, that is something that countries have been doing forever. It would help our interest, so they're going to go through with doing something like that. The government are not above pretty much anything. Anybody have any? I can feel myself getting a little bit. I think I've been doing this long enough that I'm getting D'd out. I got diagnosed with ADHD at 27. I was too smart for my own good. I was able to get through school, kind of. C's get degrees. And by that, I'm talking about the high school there. Okay, I got the D's this high school. I was pretty much 3.9 in college. But I didn't get diagnosed with ADHD till after college. But through sheer Marine Corps instilled willpower, and the fact that college is not that hard if you are getting a liberal arts degree, I was able to get my 3.9. And I mean that. That's that impressive in the liberal arts. And it might have been impressive, but I truly believe in my heart of hearts I'm not it is not hard to get a 3.9 in the liberal arts, even in a rigorous college. I went to the University of Connecticut. It is a, it's a good school. It was called a public Ivy on some list that some elitist asshole made up years ago. Okay, so this is the last before I actually didn't really do that. This is the last article before I'm going to go into this this last thing, which is this is the second to last article. U.S. Senator blocks arms sales to Hungary over blocking bid. Okay, so Hungary is close to my heart because I'm, like I said earlier, I'm 3/4 full Irish. My dad is half Irish, half Hungarian. So my was Hungarian. I've been to Hungary before. Love to go back. Probably will soon. I was supposed to go last year. Won't be going this year, likely. This happened to pop up, and Hungary has sort of a baby dictator. And when I say baby dictator, I mean he's kind of a dictator, kind of not. This guy Orban. Yeah, and my name Samuel Urban is, as you can guess, is a different spelling of that last name. So the right-wing dictator, and I'm saying right-wing. This is Europe rules. Europe has a larger spectrum of politics and far-right politics that far exceeds ours. So sort of a right-wing dictator that has that is not doing good things for the economy. From what I heard from my friends in Hungary, Chris, I don't think but my buddy Chris with a Z. The SZ is S sound in Hungarian. It's not a good place. I haven't been there since he was the president, Viktor Orban, when I was there, I think in 2019, but he wasn't accelerated after the COVID stuff. He's wasted money on soccer stadiums, bunch of stuff. Now the national soccer team, they're not even that good. They're not even really good at all. They're better at the national. They're better at hockey, but Hungary has been one of the countries probably least sided with Russia that has somewhat sided with Russia, but Russia and Putin, they've had a little bit of assistance from who they had help from. Belarus is the classic one. They've had a little bit of assistance from Belarus with what they've done. They've had a little bit of assistance from Serbia. They've had a little bit of assistance, I think, from Poland, maybe the smallest bit. Or no, not Poland. No, Poland's been strongly in the other side. And then Hungary has given a little bit of help. I think this is the extent of the help that Hungary has given to Russia. And Hungary is part of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, which is a defensive alliance that Hungary is a part of with the United States. But we're going to go through this article and break this down, and I have some thoughts. So the top Republican on the U.S. Senate Foreign Relations Committee said he was blocking a $735 million arms sale. $1 million arms sale to Hungary because its government has refused to approve Sweden's bid to join NATO. So, I mean, this is kind of the same stuff that the federal government does to states sometimes, right? They are like given promises that were made to me and others last would be done, and the fact that it is now June and still not done, I decided that the state of new U.S. military equipment to Hungary will be on. And then he says Hungary should take the actions necessary to allow Sweden into the alliance. There is an implied or else here. So they raise concerns over human rights or diplomatic issues that can delay or stop weapons sales. And to block the deal was first reported in the Washington Post, which said the sale included 24 HIMARS rocket launch batteries. I don't even know what those are. And 100 rockets in pods along with associated parts and support. And the Hungarian Defense Ministry, which is like their Secretary of Defense, they released a statement saying it didn't intend to buy them. It didn't want the HIMARS system, and I don't know if that's them playing hardball and, oh, I didn't want your HIMARS system anyway. Um, but maybe they don't really need them. Okay, so actually, I didn't see this before. During the previous government term, the government committee in charge of procurement requested information about HIMARS missile systems in a letter with a March 2022 deadline. There was no response from the U.S. side, therefore, the matter closed, Hungary said. Okay, so Sweden applied to join NATO last year as a result of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Makes sense. Sweden is a little bit closer over there. Okay, so Craig said something here. Craig, you came in under a different picture this time. That's weird, but that's fine. Finland is in and Sweden is out. Hungary and Turkey are, I understand. I wonder what Hungary and Turkey feel about Finland joining threat to Russia. And Finland has historically isolationists and more kind of on their own. You know, they weren't really on either side in World War II. I mean, they were sort of on the side, but they weren't connected to any Nazi fronts. I think they were supported by Nazi forces, but you know, you kind of can't blame them because they were being invaded by the Soviets, who were also aggressors. So it's weird because Sweden, I mean, Denmark's in NATO. I think Denmark's in NATO. Norway's definitely in NATO. Sweden is on the other side of Finland. I mean, if Finland's in NATO, Sweden doesn't have to be in NATO. But Finland is much more damaging to the Russians. So I'm surprised what's going on. I don't know. Maybe this is like 4D chess and I'm just missing this. This is the way that I view this is that, you know, NATO is supposed to be a military alliance, and it strikes me being it seems like I guess this senator specifically is kind of bullying Hungary into voting the way that they want them to vote, so they get their weapons, which they might need for their own defense, and Turkey as well, and it's possible. I don't. I'm more familiar with Hungarian politics, not familiar enough to speak on them with any amount of confidence, but I'm more comfortable with understanding Hungarian politics, and it does seem like there is he is a dictator. I mean, Viktor Orban he has dictatorial properties, and I think it's a problem. I don't know much about Turkey, that situation. There was something with like foreigners from other countries voting in Turkish elections, wanted for other people. People in Turkey wanted the incumbent. An extremist. He's more of an Islamist, which goes against Ataturk, the founder of the ashes of the Ottoman Empire. That was his whole deal. And that was the culture of Turkey when they joined NATO. But increasingly, Turkey has been an opponent, and it's possible that they were even on the other end of the proxy war when the West was fighting ISIS. So it makes sense to me that Turkey would be getting closer to Russia, and I mean, it seems to me, and I wish Chris was here, but it seems to me that Hungary is doing something similar and getting closer to Russia, and I don't know what their goal is. What Orban's goal is with this. I don't know how regular Hungarian people feel about it. Excuse me. It's not like it's ask them, because they don't really have free speech there anymore, and people are scared to speak out, which is something I've encountered a number of times, to be honest. quick side note, I recently I wanted to bring on a Saudi national who I was introduced to, who was somewhat of a dissident and still had family in Saudi Arabia. And he did not want to come on, even though his identity would have been protected by me, although I'm not a professional. And I fully respect his decision to not want to come on regardless. It's not a situation I'm in because I live in a country where I do feel that my rights are sometimes but still largely I can still say these things. I can still say the things that I do against the government, and I'm mostly in my safety. Um, but in Hungary, that's not true, and in Turkey, that's definitely not true. So, but I got way off. But Hungary is they don't want Sweden joining NATO for whatever reason, and I don't know why that is. But like, what's the point of them voting if you're just going to withhold weapons to your military ally? They're supposed to be your military ally, but you're going to withhold weapons because they don't vote to in your military alliance. That to me sounds a whole lot like a subordinate nation rather than an ally. It sounds more like an ally in the sense of that sounds more like an ally in the sense of like the Roman Empire, who had allies in a lot of cases conquered people and subordinate to the Romans. And in a lot of cases, that was probably the best thing for that group to do. But it doesn't mean that it isn't, shady, and it doesn't mean that they're really equal partners. And I think that this shows that. Um, and it's weird for me because like, my grandfather was born in the United States shortly after his parents emigrated. And he fought in the U.S. Army in World War II, and he married another Catholic, an Irish woman, and he had kids who were Catholic. But he through a time of the 1920s when the KKK was large. There was sentiment. My dad grew up in a segregated Catholic community away from the Protestants. He was called a Mick and stuff like that. And I'm not saying that because it was like bad. Like, it wasn't really things that were in my dad and my grandfather's lifetime. And I'm sitting here as a third generation American service member. My grandfather was in the Army. My father was in the Air Force, and I was in the Marine. Three of us, each it's funny, each of us more Irish than the last because my grandfather's full Hungarian, my dad's Irish, and I'm 3/4 Irish and a quarter Hungarian. Yeah, we're gonna skip that trend because I don't think I'm gonna. I could marry an Irish girl, and then my kids would be an eighth Hungarian and it's seven Irish. And at that point, they're just a Hungarian quadroon. But I, why did I? Okay, so the point is, this is the power of America, right? Like America as an entity, as a country, attracted people from all over the world and assimilated them to their. So while I am a Irish and Hungarian person, I'm those things are just ethnic. My culture, I have a little flavor, a little and haggis. Now it's Scottish. A little paprika of my Americanness because I'm mostly I am American. And that's the power of this. It's like I'm reading this as an American right now, and it's weird to me because you go back 100 years and my bloodline loyal to Hungary, but I'm loyal to Hungary in the sense that I care about the country that, there was a Hungarian person who gave me a life here in Hungary. But the American culture is so like even though part Hungarian, a quarter, which is not insignificant, I also I'm on the other side of this, and not actively participating in this, but me and plenty other Hungarian Americans or Americans who are mutts with some Hungarian blood in them, they're most of them are not even going to think about this as much as I am because of cultural assimilation, and that's the real power of America. And that's what it always has been. People say diversity is our strength, and sometimes people mock that, but the ability to be attractive to people from all over the world and get the best of the best from a lot of those places is made America be able to do things like bully European nations like Hungary. And that is all I got to say about that. Doug is hungry too. Craig, Sweden complains about Turkey's human rights violations. I mean, that's valid. And Turkey says they are harboring terrorists. Kurdistan Workers' Party. Oh, welcome, DB. I didn't know you were in here as well. I'm glad you joined. Really appreciate that. Thanks again, Doug and Daniel, and also Craig, for coming again. I've been here an hour and a half, but I'm just gonna go through this last article after I answer your questions, and then we'll be out of here. But I don't have to have an end date. I planned on this being about an hour. And if you guys are my podcast listeners, you must like ranty because I try to episodes, but I don't always do well. Okay, so Craig and DB have both brought up the Kurds. So Sweden complains about Turkey human rights abuses, and Turkey says they are harboring terrorists. The Kurdistan Workers' Party. Okay, so the Kurdistan Workers' Party, if I'm remembering correctly, if I look it up, I'm going to go down a rabbit hole. So they're Doug is making fun of my culture right now. One of him, he's Mexican. He is Mexican, but we love it. Anyway, I love Hispanic people. I love Hispanic people here at Trump Tower. Just crushed some falafel. Fantastic, Daniel. Falafel's amazing. The Kurdistan Workers' Party. This is they are a separatist Marxist organization that was trying to get a Turkish falafel at that. Fantastic. All falafel's good falafel. I got to stop reading this. I got to recenter myself. Sorry. Give me 20 seconds, and I promise it'll be better after that. So the Kurds, all they was their own, but of course, Kurdish land is spread out throughout a number of different countries. There's Iraqi Kurdistan, there is Syrian Kurdistan, I think. There's Turkish Kurdistan, and there is. Oh, that might be it. I think it's it. Iraq. I think that's it, but it might be a few more. So they are likely, to a certain extent, people that are being discriminated against their respective governments, all of them basically. I mean, Saddam, when they refer to Saddam using chemical weapons on his own people, they're generally being used against the Kurds. And the Kurds are one of these people that there are many places in the world where there are identities of people that want to have their own state, and maybe they had their past and they want to have one again. And the Kurds are one of them, and I have been following them for a long time. I've been a big fan of the Kurds. I have a Kurdish flag. I have a little bit of a flag collection, so the Kurdish flag is one that I have. And I was personally very upset in, I don't know, 2017 or 2018 when the U.S. government, in my perspective, basically started abandoning the. In hindsight, Turkey does not like the Turkey fights against Kurdish separatism, and they don't want the Kurds to take their land away. Okay, Turkey wants to rule over the Kurds. They have a secular state that, in theory, is not based on the Turkish ethnic group or perceived, because a lot of Turks are just Greeks, and a lot of Greeks are just Turks, and sometimes you can't even tell the difference, and they hate each other for some reason. But I digress. So the Turks don't really want to, or the Kurds don't really want to be in Turkey. A lot of them don't. They all these different people, but the Turkish to let them leave. Similarly to how the Spanish government won't let Catalonia, won't let Brittany leave. The English government, the UK government won't let Scotland leave. You know, there's things like this everywhere. Pakistan won't let Kashmir leave. Canada won't let. Well, Canada has given in to all the demands of the French Canadians. So Sweden uses, and Turkey says they're harboring terrorists. So I mean, Sweden probably is. Sweden's one of those places. They kind of put their money where their mouth is on like. The problem is that the Swedes and the Norwegians, and especially the Finns, they don't treat who aren't really indigenous people because they're not necessarily from more recent migrants, but they are people living would kind of associate with indigenous people, and there's a conversation to be had. Yeah, move on from this. I multiple rants. Center myself one more time. Maybe I should limit this time just because I might just get out of it to stay on. You guys, let me know what you let me know about the forum. I'm kind of, you know, I'm just figuring it out as I go. All falafel is good falafel. This article I'm gonna close out. So like to have asked, get them ready. Up a minute any time, and I'll answer afterwards. And those can be questions about anything, about any of the episodes, about any other things you just want my perspective on, if I have a perspective on it. But you can ask those at any time. I'll look at them after we're done with this article. So this is the article, and this somebody I follow on Twitter, Heidi something. She's a lesbian. She's like she's a lesbian, and she's a lesbian and a woman, and like, you know, not like she's not a non-man, which is what the title of this article. Good segue. I didn't go off topic. Oh, before I go into this, I'm going to establish two anthropology concepts. Okay, this is not where I wanted to be. Qualitative methods and monitoring. Okay, this is way more complicated, but we're going to get the basic definitions are in here. So okay, emic and etic. Okay, these are terms usually used by anthropologists. So this is even this is what I get. The etic perspective is the outsider's perspective. Okay, so I'm not saying one of these. I'm just saying that these are a thing, and associated with these different perspectives in anthropology. So when a paper or some sort of study is done in anthropology, it is explicit whether the perspective being expressed is an emic, which is to say that emic is to say that they are. I always forget emic insider's perspective. So the emic is insiders, and I'm gonna get a quick here so that we're going to apply this to this next article that I'm doing. Sorry, I'm starting to talk like a teacher. Sometimes that comes out more than others. I mean, I put myself in the education category, so I can do that a little bit. So the perspective, an outsider's perspective of gender in Afghanistan. Okay, Afghanistan is not one you want to look into because there's some weird stuff going on. Children in Afghanistan and dancing boys, which I don't think I'd be able to. The emic perspective is the insider's perspective from within is situated. So I can on white New England culture. I can have an emic perspective on the. I can have an emic perspective on American culture in general. I cannot have an emic on Muslim culture. I can't have an etic culture. I mean, kind of can because U.S. But I can't have emic. I can't have an emic, an insider's perspective on Polynesian. If you are giving your perspective and you are an outsider from whatever culture you're discussing, then your perspective is an it is out it is outside. Etic is out them and saying what they are, and then I'm forgetting them. So yeah, emic is learned this like 7 years ago, and I haven't been able to remember. Emic, M is me backwards. Emic, insider. Is that even right? Insider. Emic perspective is the insider's perspective. Okay. Okay. So I'm a woman. Don't title this article. So women have shared their concern about the erasure of all female identities after Johns Hopkins University used the phrase non-man to describe lesbians. And I thought I had a picture here. Okay, so this was from Johns Hopkins. Lesbian, sexual, a non-man attracted to non-men. While past definitions refer to lesbian as a woman who is emotionally, romantically, and or sexually attracted to other women, this updated definition includes non-binary people who may identify with the label. Oh God, the article literally just has Twitter posts. This is really what we're getting to now. Okay, if they can call themselves journalists, I guess I'm a journalist too. So, John Hopkins used this phrase non-man to describe lesbians, and I don't know if they are like, I don't know if the specific person who brought this out is somehow a lesbian, perhaps one of these non-binary lesbians I've learned about recently. Apparently, you can be a lesbian with a penis now. I think that's how it works. It is lazy. So, what I'm getting at here is them defining the term lesbian to be a non-woman. It is perspective. It's an outsider perspective. But when you're giving an etic perspective, when I give my on, for example, a Native American culture, I'm giving my perspective on Native American culture. I'm discussing how I feel about a situation based on my own understanding of the world and based on my experience. I don't tell Native Americans what their identity should be or what terms that they should use them mean. And I don't like do that, and I don't think that that's a good thing to do. Whenever possible, I use the indigenous terms. Whenever possible, I try my best to describe Native American situation in the and whatever other cultures. That was just an example. Closest to the emic, but it's closest to the emic, closest to perspective from someone in that own culture, but that I am giving an etic perspective. Where when you are the definition of this term for other people who identify with that term and have a different understanding of what that is, it's a weird cultural erasure where from a position of a public institution like this of authority that is able to from the term means and not asking the people who actually identify with it. I mean, it's I don't know if dehuman going too far, but that is how I feel about it. I do think that it's a little dehumanizing. to do that. And I see this with other terms. It's the simplest way that I describe this is barbarians. And the barbarians comes from, I think, the Romans. Foreigners, it sounded like they were saying bar, bar, bar when they. So barbarian is a term that that people in history don't really use anymore because it's an outdated term that kind of means like savage. Savage is another term in the same way. Um, Primitive terms that are used to describe other cultures that are perceived as primitive and the, in a lot of cases those terms were used to dehumanize people by bad things happening to them. Like if a country didn't have a flag through the understanding of Europeans, they were able to be conquered because they weren't a civilized people. I mean, this is the reason Ethiopia stay independent like the 1900s when the Italians decide they're going to take it over because of the respect for the country of Ethiopia, the civilization of Ethiopia, and also because decent state. I mean, I think they gave the Italians a run for their money, which it's the Italians, but a lot more technology is what I'm saying, and they were still able to the Ethiopians were able to win out at least for. Barbarian is a good term to decide the woke. I guess if you think that the woke are culture, then yeah, I think it is. But and I'm explicitly, I'm not saying that Johns Hopkins University is trying to kill lesbians. I'm not saying that. I am saying though that I think that it's particularly okay to decide for other people what a term should be used to describe. That's okay in any situation. Um, so another example of this would be Gentiles versus in the Jewish faith, people that are not Jewish are called Gentiles, and I've never liked that term either because it's a term from someone else's culture that is used to describe me, and it's used to describe me not based on my own culture, I am and what my culture is, but it's used to describe me as being lacking in some sort of trait. In this case, that would be being Jewish. So, am I making my point? Am I making a good point here? Um, so with Gentiles and the Jewish faith, traits of non-Jews. This reminds me a lot of barbarians. They're lacking civilization. And these are both etic terms that are used to describe people in other cultures. So these are terms that come from cultures, from the Jewish culture and from the other one from China. China had a term for barbarians. They had a term for the Romans had a term for it. Everybody had a term for barbarians. It was the others. We are us, they are them. So sometimes like Emic and what was I trying to say here? Sorry. So a lot of times, okay, so what I'm saying is I want to make something clear because often when you try to define somebody, often people are based on contrast. So when a culture will define themselves by contrast, a culture might be like we're strong and they're weak. We use this particular weapon. We're really good at horse riding. They don't believe in horse riding. Like a culture will itself by a contrast to another culture, but they're still defining themselves with specific traits. Versus when from an etic perspective, defining lesbians as non-men, is moving from outside that culture and deciding for the lesbians that they are being defined by lacking the trait of being men. But what I'm trying to say is that while a culture itself, from inside their own culture, may themselves based on um, based on contrast to some other culture and their perceived bad traits, that when from an etic perspective other people decide that lesbians are non-men for them, that doesn't mean that that is an acceptable way for, so it's a acceptable way to view their identity. So it's, I think that it's really really dehumanizing for them to say non-man to describe lesbians, and for all the reasons I just said. I guess I went through all of it. Okay, yeah, so they're saying non-men instead of women. Yeah, that's all I got. I had a few more things about Oren McIntyre. I I've been going for too long. I'm going for almost 2 hours, so I think I'm good. Does anyone have? I hop off here. Anyone have any recommendation or any questions? Any comments? I hope I didn't keep my girlfriend awake. Freaking, I didn't get a text from her, so I must not have. Some good content. She came in here yelling at me. Anybody there? Still watching. Love you, Sam. Love you too, Doug. I don't know what. Great job. Look, guys, tell me great job, but like, nice show. Okay, I appreciate it. I appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much. I know this wasn't the best show ever. You guys are too nice to me. How good it was, but no, I mean, for Craig and Doug and Dan out the whole time, and I think DB looking forward to the China. That's good because I'm gonna get on them. Also, DB, are you aware? I haven't YouTube episodes on of the podcast. You can get them audio only. I think that you found me on YouTube, that that you can get the episodes. I'll be catching up soon, but soon on the YouTube shows. But if you were missing the recent shows, you can check them out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. It's on all the ones. But I'll be back on the YouTube soon. I got a new computer. I was having some issues with the tech, and I literally just yesterday finished setting this thing up. Let's get to best show ever. Thank you, Daniel. Making Joe Rogan work for his viewers. 13 viewers on my live show is definitely making Joe Rogan have a. He just released episode 1999 with RF. It scared the crap out of me. It was rough. I did not listen to the whole thing. I couldn't do it. And a half for 2000. I mean, if he has on Donald Trump, I'll lose my mind. I think it's possible. Rogan's money. I mean, yeah. I think it's possible that if Joe Rogan is going to have somebody for 2000, special for 2000, but I think he'll probably go with his friends. That's what he might do for a special episode. He might do like a special protect our parks with like everybody. Or it could be a big name. It might be man, it'd be great if it was a Randall Carlson episode, but I bet I'm hoping for Trump. I would love to talk to RFK is literally hiding from the CIA. Joe Rogan needs to have Trump on. Yes, Joe Rogan does need to have Trump on. I would pay so much money to watch that. I mean, it's exceptional. I can't wait if that happens. I mean, I don't know why it hasn't already. But yeah, we'll see. Episode 2000. I'm really looking forward to it. Watch it just be like he just brings on some shitty comedian or a UFC fighter or something. I would try. 1999 be RFK Jr. really made me. Jerry owes us a Randall Carlson episode. He does have on. Uh, he is going to have on. Um, what's it called? He's getting this guy Flint Dibble, who's an archaeologist who, and I think he's an asshole. Um, going to debate Graham Hancock. Apparently, I don't believe it's true. I will. So we'll see. All right, I am going to end it here, guys. Unless someone else has something to say, I appreciate all the kind words. Thank you so much. And I will see you again next week, hopefully. And if you have any suggestions, any questions you want me to answer next week, you think about throughout the week, please drop them in the Discord or send me a message on Twitter, stuff like that. Interact. I love doing this live show. I love interacting with everybody. I love hearing what people have to say. I mean, that's ultimately why I started this podcast and everything, because I wanted to stop bothering my friends and family with my political, and instead find other people on the internet who want to hear what I have to say. So thanks for listening, everybody. Had a great time. Went twice as long as I intended on doing it, but I'll always hang out if I got more to say and people are here listening to me rant. So, all right. Good night.